Hello and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I have some breaking news coming out here for you, but before we get into that, I just want to apologize for my voice. If it's breaking or cracking or anything like that, I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold right now, so my voice is really starting to go out on me. So we'll try our best to get through this here for you and get you the information that you need. So let's get right into this. Let's talk about the Czech Republic here. Okay, this is a NATO member, and this is the president of the Czech Republic. His name is Peter Pavel. So he was in an interview on Czech television just on Friday. And during this interview, he stated that NATO troops could carry out support activities directly on Ukrainian territory, as this would not violate any international rules. Okay? So he was stating that as long as the NATO troops that are there, or civilians, he stated, civilians or NATO member states troops, as long as they're assisting in support roles and not involved in direct combat, that it would be basically legal for them to do so under international law. Okay? So this comes after multiple countries, like France was saying they'd be willing to send their troops to Ukraine. Okay, we had Germany coming out and saying that UK troops were already on the ground in Ukraine. They're firing British Storm Shadow missiles. And we also had the Polish foreign minister come out and say that he knows of several countries that are already involved on the ground in Ukraine right now. These are NATO nations, several countries involved already on the ground in Ukraine with NATO troops. Okay, so very big news what's coming out here. So I want to share this information with you. Let's get right into this. So this is on Your Active. NATO support in Ukraine not against international rules, says Czech president. It says here, Pavel's comments about further support for Ukraine during his interview on Friday came just days after he met with French President Emmanuel Macron, who recently broached the subject of sending Western troops to Ukraine. According to Pavel, there must be a clear distinction between deploying combat troops and possibly involving troops in some support activities in which NATO already has experience. So they're already planning right now to send NATO troops to Ukraine to at least provide support roles on the ground with NATO troops. It should be remembered that after the annexation of Crimea and the occupation of part of the Donbass, which was essentially an aggression, albeit on a much smaller scale than today, a NATO training mission was operating on Ukrainian territory, which at one time included more than 15 countries and numbered around 1,000 people. Pavel, the former head of NATO's military committee, recalled. From the point of view of international law and the UN Charter, there would be nothing to prevent NATO member state troops, as well as civilians, for example, from assisting in the work in Ukraine. So he's saying that according to international law, it's legal for NATO troops to be on the ground in Ukraine as long as they are not in a combat style role where they're literally, like maybe launching missiles or maybe they're running around with their rifles or whatever it might be, right? So as long as they're not directly engaging with the Russians and they're doing more of a support role, let's say maybe managing stockpiles, ammunition, or things like that, they could technically be on the ground in Ukraine. Asked whether he would support the involvement of NATO troops in direct support of Ukraine on its territory, Pavel did not say no. So he didn't say that he'd basically be against sending NATO troops to Ukraine on the ground in direct support. So he did not say that he was not willing to do so. I would certainly not reject a debate on this issue if it could, or if we could agree with allies that, for example, instead of training Ukrainian soldiers on the territory of NATO member states and transporting thousands of troops to, say, Poland or Czech Republic, it would make much more sense to transport a few dozen instructors to Ukrainian territory and train Ukrainian soldiers there. So he's saying too that they should just train troops on the ground in Ukraine. So basically, they're going to be doing all of the logistics basically for Ukraine and support roles and training roles and everything. But Ukraine's going to be firing the weapons. So they're basically doing one step further than what they were doing before, which was just supplying the weaponry. Now they're going to be actually getting involved, supporting Ukraine on the ground. maybe even with intelligence too. He also recalled that after the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Moscow said that anyone providing any assistance to Ukraine would be a legitimate target. Russia did say that. Today, we are not only supplying Ukraine with small arms, we are supplying it with tanks. We may soon supply it with aircraft. We are supplying it with medium range cruise missiles, and yet there has been no attack on NATO territory. Russia knows full well that it would be a violation of law of a much greater caliber than what it is doing now, Pavel said, adding that Russia is aware of NATO's strength. According to Pavel, Western allies should have the courage to defend their activities legally because helping to train and maintain equipment in a sovereign country is not combat, he explained. So there you go again. As long as they're doing some sort of support role and they're not involved in combat, it's legal for them to do so, is what he's stating. Pavel made similar comments after meeting Macron a week ago on March 5th. At a press conference, the two leaders discussed the need to find every possible way to help Ukraine, with Pavel pointing to training Ukrainian troops on the ground as one of the options. So there we go again. Willing to train Ukrainian troops on the ground. Even if there is a training mission on its Ukrainian territory, it is not a violation of any international rule, and it is up to us what form of assistance we choose to provide to Ukraine, as long as we stay within that limit of non-combat engagement. So as long as they're not engaged in combat, they are willing to send NATO troops to Ukraine to support them on the ground, to do a support role, but not engaging in combat. This makes Pavel one of the few European politicians to support Macron's decision of sending troops to Ukraine. So yeah, this is definitely one of the few politicians from other countries that have supported Emmanuel Macron. And if you weren't aware of that, Emmanuel Macron came out like a week ago, and he basically said that he'd be willing to send troops to Ukraine to fight Russia. They would not rule out any type of support to Ukraine. They were willing to go all in if necessary to save Ukraine, and that NATO members would potentially have to step in to save Ukraine if they start to lose this war. Several EU leaders dismissed Macron's comments about sending Western troops to Ukraine. Pavel initially showed no support, but if this is not military action but a support action, as Pavel describes it, support from European countries might be more realistic. So once again, I don't know, we've probably had, 5 or 6 countries that are NATO members coming out now and stating that we need to get involved in this war with actual troops on the ground. Okay. The UK's are apparently already there right now. We know that France is open and willing to go. Germany's in the talks right now of doing that. The Polish foreign minister said that there's multiple countries involved already in Ukraine right now with troops on the ground. So we're very close here to the point where there will be a normalization of NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine fighting against the Russians, or at least providing some sort of support role to the Ukrainians to fight the Russians. So they're slowly getting more and more involved here, to the point where at some point this will lead to an inevitability where Russia's going to have to engage with NATO. So there's just lots of big red flags here, lots of really big issues here going on in Ukraine. And obviously Ukraine is not doing good right now. They don't have a lot of support. And this kind of information shows that Ukraine is doing really bad over there right now, and it's a lot worse than what we're being told. So expect at some point here, when these countries start sending troops to Ukraine, that at some point this could potentially lead to a world war with Russia. Okay, this really could. And Russia has come out and warned this many times. Dmitry Peskov, their military spokesperson, has come out and said that this would be an inevitability of war with NATO and Russia if they were to put troops on the ground in Ukraine. And that includes support roles, okay? It doesn't matter what type of roles they're doing, but if they're on the ground, they're considering NATO being involved in this war, and they may declare war on the West. So let me know what you think down below. This is obviously scary information here coming out, but I want to bring this to your attention and let you know what's going on here. So comment below, share your thoughts, and if you got something out of this, please smash the like button. And also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell, that way YouTube can notify you. And with that, I hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in. Everybody take care and God bless. See you in the next one.